On today's episode on All Things LOCS, we have an amazing guest. He's someone that I consider to be an episode. So on this episode, we're going to be diving into everything related to sales leadership with Josh Brunson. Josh, so much. It's so awesome to have you here, man. Really excited for you to be here.
It's an honor.
Yes,
yeah,
yes, dude. So you and I have been friends for quite some time, and we have
Unfortunately,
too long.
Unfortunately, too long, a little too long, man. But this is actually kind of hard for me because I just want to mess with you and talk about the most disgusting jokes. But just for people at home, give yourself a little bit of an intro. I feel like you're going to be doing a better job than me on this.
So I have been. So I'll start with the version of story. So the first story, when I was literally first grade, I fell in love with sales. So the candy bars you give out and you sell door to door.
Girl Scout cookies, but I got you. Yeah. That's
same thing, bro.
Same thing.
So I basically loved talking to people and meeting new people. Mm-hmm. And my dad was my best customer. He was always buying the chocolate candy bars. And so we were going on vacation. I was like, I don't really want to go on vacation. And they're like, what are you talking about? So my parents had to write a check to the school and check out cases of candy bars. And I would stand in front in a small coastal town in Oregon, in front of the grocery store, selling candy bars. And that's what I did all day long. And I loved it. And then by the time it was done, I sold more candy bars than the entire school combined. So when they get out those leaflets and they're like, what do you want? Who gets a radio or who gets the big top?
Oh, yeah.
I got to pick two of them. So I got a radio and a little place that thing. And then I fell in love with it. I just found connecting with people and just having real conversations. I wouldn't suggest doing that with your kids now, but back then it was safe. Mm-hmm. And then I really learned a lot of my sales stuff from my dad and my grandfather. So my dad, in the span of his life, built 13 businesses. Mm. Wow. And I didn't find out until he died in 2019 that all of his businesses, some in the 70s when he started, they were still using the same exact business model. And this coming from a man who didn't graduate the 6th grade. And Crate and Barrel was one of the businesses he sold it to. It was insane. Insane. And he would just have an idea, but the idea was always based around solving a problem. And he would see the problem and he'd challenge himself with finding the solution. And then he would build the business up and then sell it off. And so I watched him do that time and time again. And then my grandfather was another big inspiration in sales for me. When I was 12, he was the #1 sales guy for a liquor distributor company, Southern Wine and Spirits. So I used to go into bars with him at 12 years old or big companies. And he would be he would know people. He would talk to them. Hey, how's the kids? How's your wife? How's this? And he'd call them by name. And then from one bar to the next, he'd say, what did you see me do there? How did you see me interact with them? What did I do different at this bar?
A real life apprenticeship. He's just...
Yeah, at 12 years old, I saw him do that. And it was very interesting. And then that with a background coupled with, and this might be a sensitive subject, but as a Jehovah's Witness, you really are taught to be very observant and aware of your surroundings. So when you go knock on the door, what bumper stickers were on the car? What, were there toys in the yard? How can you sway the conversation into how do you feel about life right now for your family and for your friends? And so then it gets you allowed in the door to talk to them about the Bible. And so I learned it was very structured, everything. And this has led to where I'm at now.
Very intentional, it sounds like.
Yeah, the whole thing.
That's impressive, man. There's something to be said for learning from your, the family before you, right? You see the template. What would you say was the greatest lesson overall? Seeing, not just necessarily a strategy. It's build a business, sell it, great strategy. But what's the biggest thing that you took from your dad and grandfather that has really helped you to this day the most?
So from my dad, I can really say I took the lesson of what not to be in some ways, very reactionary, and how that really hurts you. Because when you're reactionary, you have the loss of something, but then you have to figure out how to fix what you just fucked up.
So you mean the emotional control?
Yeah, very much so, because there was zero. And on my grandfather's side, it was more by being too much of a people pleaser. And so I had the both stark contrast, when you're the contrast. So really learning on having that ability to learn from two people and what to do and what not to do. It was literally the greatest thing. That's why when people are what's the best thing about sales? It's be a student of human behavior. That's it.
What do you can expand on that a little bit? Like I get a sense of what you're talking about, but for somebody who maybe is in sales and they're just not that great, or somebody who's like, I want to go into sales, what does that actually mean?
For me, being a student of human behavior was really more about just watching how people operate. Some people think the arms crossed are like, that means they're digging their heels in. They just want you to explain more. They're not digging their heels in. They're just waiting for the aha moment for themselves. Otherwise, they would walk. They wouldn't stand there. So just tapping into how people react, their facial expressions. I saw one today at a casino where the wife was like super sweet, and then to the husband, and she's like, "I'm so sorry, I'm taking so long." And then as soon as he turned his back, she's like, and I was like, again, human behavior, like. There's respect there on both sides. Like he's walking too fast, she's walking too slow. They're sweet to each other's faces, but when it comes time, it's like, I like that ugliness. Like, get it out. Just talk about what the fuck the problem is. So being a student behavior, like before you start doing something, just sit back and chill, just relax.
That's such a powerful thing, because we're never not going to be interacting with each other, like just as a species, right? That's always going to be a thing. So the sooner that you can master human behavior, which is a constant thing. No one's ever really the same. Mm-hmm. But if you're constantly studying human behavior, you're going to be going to a lot of great, wonderful places. It sounds like you had some really good mentors with your dad and your grandfather. Where has that led you into your career, and like the companies you worked with, the influencers, the leaders that you worked with? And talk to us a little bit about taking those lessons and moving into that space.
It's...
I know you don't like it, but
I know.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of get into it a little bit. It's interesting because I think when you're reactionary and the human behavior comes up, when you're reactionary, you're very animalistic. And when you're animalistic, you're coming from survival mode, which is a fear-based or desperation place. And so being able to confidently speak your mind. I remember I was having a conversation with one of my clients, and he kept using because he loved Tony Robbins, he would use a Tony Robbins word, which I thought was hilarious, which was delusional.
Delusional.
And he kept saying, I'm delusional. I remember we were sitting at a pub, he was sitting at the pub table and I was standing, and I just leaned forward and I jokingly put my hand on his knee and I said, why do you use the word delusion? And he goes, because I don't know. And I said, no, it's not delusion. You're just ignorant.
You're just dumb.
Well, and he goes, and I don't mean anything bad by that. You just don't know. And he was like, he thought about it. He goes, you're right. It is ignorance. I'm like, you don't know what you don't know, but if you don't try something, you will never be there. So it's interesting when you start looking at the human behavior. If you can just say something like it is, it takes the wind out of the ego, and you're calm about it. That's like when it comes to sales, the best word you can ever say in a sale is okay.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Cool.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Great. I love that. Like, it takes the wind out of their objection of like pushing back on you. It's so simple just to say, okay, that's fine. And
then you transition and pivot from there.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just a disarming thing where you're saying, I don't want to pay for it today, or I'm not ready to move forward, and you're like, okay, and then like, oh, that wasn't that bad, and then
exactly. The other thing is using their, and I'm not I know you are, but you're Antonio. You like NLP stuff. I don't really care for NLP stuff.
NLP?
Neurological language programming.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think
you know what it is. But when someone says the word fine to me, it's a trigger for me. So I will literally look at them and say frustrated, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. Yeah. And that's how I just will laugh. Mm-hmm. And it just like level playing field. And they're like, well, this guy's got a sense of humor. I like to laugh and have a personality in a sale. That also makes it go to very neutral.
And so kind of, being in that space, like where is that ultimately led you? Because it's not really everybody that is kind of a student of human behavior, right? It's like it seems to be more and more like it's a specialized thing. Like where has that taken you in your career, and who have you helped?
I've done a lot of corporate gigs. So American Express, Alaskan Airlines, Costco, Vitamix. Vitamix, I was one of the lead sales trainers, so I'd get big groups of people. I'd speak at all their foundational meetings, and it was fun. And I really liked the boots on the ground, in the trenches type of work with people and having fun. I would never expect someone to get up and pitch a product like Vitamix if I wasn't willing to do it. And so I would do it with them. And it was just, to me, that was fun. And at one point I got to an emotional state that I was like, I'm slinging a product that I love and I believe in. However, I have to go back to my roots with my dad. Being an entrepreneur, that was where my love and focus really was. But Vitamix taught me a lot about human interaction because I was able to watch people and like getting back to the student behavior, I would say things and try things, and some might even say they would be slightly offensive sometimes, but I would take notes all day long. They'd leave, and I'd take a note and be like, oh man, that one was awesome. Don't do that one again. Like, if I write it down, I can remember it.
Well, one thing you said to me before in the past is like, I am a professional triggerer.
Yeah.
To describe what that means. Like,
for me, there's a couple. Well, so there's both sides of the coin. Potential customer, trigger, so I can trigger them and have them, and basically like the ignorant thing, I want to call a spade, and you'll either appreciate it or you'll hate it. But we're going to have a great conversation based off me triggering you. As a sales trainer or coach, my job is to really put you in every situation that makes you uncomfortable. So when it actually happens, there is no uncomfortable or awkward silence. Not that silence is not a bad thing. I mean, it's a great thing if you're silent. Mm-hmm. But it comes to a point when I'm training somebody, I really want them to experience in a controlled environment things that they wouldn't normally ever see and feel. And then what you do is you locate in the body where that feeling comes from.
Here's something that's interesting, because I think there's different entrepreneurs that look at, and actually people in general, where sales tends to be kind of the department where people either have like, it's no big deal, just sales is natural. And also it can also be a department where it's like, I feel icky. Right, I feel weird. People have like a bad taste in their mouth about like what sales is. It's like, oh, you're trying to convince me. Well, what would you say to those people? Like, what your definition or your perspective of what sales is and how it's important in everyday human life and with companies?
It's very cliche what I think sales is. And people go, oh yeah, right. For me, it's believing in a product I sell. So number one, if I have somebody in front of me, or I'm training somebody that has a product that they believe in, you get to make a difference in their life. And if you're based in integrity and authenticity and you know what you have is the best, then you do everything you can to sell them from a base of integrity, not desperation. And so when you have that real conversation with them, for me, and it's been this way my entire life, I love to sell because I truly get to help someone else. And it's funny, I was just talking to my daughter this today, and I had kind of an awareness. I loved helping people so much and loved it that I was willing to give up a lot for it. But the awareness I had today was, if I was helping someone else, I didn't have to focus on my own shit. I didn't have to focus on my limiting thoughts and behaviors. And it wasn't until about 6 years ago, and I had accomplished a shit ton in my life and stuff, be in rooms that I never thought I deserved to be in. But it wasn't until about 6 years ago until I started taking a journey that I feel like I'm a whole person. I'm a real person. I'm a great person. I used to walk around saying, I'm a good person. I'm a good person. That was my mantra every day. Like, I'm a good person. And I still slung product that I loved and believed in. That could make that, and connecting with people and really having that ability to change someone's life. I loved it. But yeah, man, it's the ability to help people is really where it comes from.
What would you say is the biggest mistake you see amongst people who are in sales?
They're desperate. They're desperate.
When you see someone that's desperate, describe what that looks like. It can look so different, but I'm wondering, like, when you see someone and you're like, this guy is leaning in a direction that's not good here. What's that like?
Making promises that they know they can't keep. So their tone changes. That's a big one to me. The other one is, and it's done in marketing, and I know it's done everywhere, and I wish just people would stop doing it and live from a place of confidence. And we talked about it briefly just recently as well. Hey, I'm going to sell you this, and this is what this product is, and this is normally $14,000, but since you're here today, and this offer today is $8,000, and you can do it in 8 payments, and it's like, you just told me your offer was garbage. If it went from 14 to 8, it's garbage. Fast action, if let's say it's $10,000 for your course or whatever you're selling, it's 10 grand. You know what? If you pay in full, let's say 8,000. That's reasonable. But the desperation comes from, I'm just willing to take whatever I can get, means you're devaluing your product or service, which just is an automatic desperation ploy, just to grab money.
Yeah. So now you talked, I want to go back a little, because you talked about just like psychology and body language a bit. So there are like obviously scenarios where, especially if like doing stuff over the phone, you don't have that ability. But then I'm curious to know the younger generation, right? Because you hear a lot of feedback, and it's always so great about like Gen Z, like the younger demographic coming out of college, that they don't know how to communicate, they don't know how to, basic stuff like emailing, things like that. I'm kind of just curious to know like what you're seeing out there, and how do you approach it? Because I just feel like a lot of people want to bash them, but I just think there's another side to it. But I'm curious to know what your opinion is.
They really don't know how to talk. That's the number one thing. Which is great, because you don't have to clean up the garbage that someone else taught them. Truly. Like, it's like someone that's overqualified. You have to untrain them to train them in the right way. I think there's a superpower there, because they don't have that emotional connection. They are behind a screen. They're sitting in mom's basement or whatever. No offense. We don't judge here, people. But if they are able to actually, they want to learn, they pick up on people's tones a lot quicker. So they can hear, because they're a little more sensitive in that sense. Like, oh my God, he just raised, my kids used to say, he's yelling. And my wife would be like, he's passionate. You haven't seen him yell. Like,
calm down.
Get over yourself.
Yes.
So there's an interesting thing, but you're right. There is a disconnect, but not in a bad way. If they're taught how to like interact, there's not unlearning behavior. For me, it's funner, because you get to see their reactions, like, oh, that's what that means, or oh, I hear what you mean now. They'll literally catch on really quick.
So it kind of excites you. Instead of like complaining about them, it's like, cool, fresh start. Let's teach them and train them, and then we'll have a rock star. Yeah,
and again, you make it fun. Like, whatever you do. Have you ever seen? This is really bad, but it's good. Have you ever seen the episode of Friends where they ask Chandler, or Chandler asks, like, there's one sexual zone, and they're like, there's 7, and then they write the body, and then they're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then they're like giving an example, and Monica starts out with 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, like they're going like all over. We used to when Vitamix, I used to make it fun, and everybody knew that episode, and I'd be like, when we get to 7, you just start yelling 7, 7, 7. And it was just kind of a fun joke. You make it fun with them, they get it. They're like, this is actually a lot of fun. Like, you don't have the old days of the boiler rooms don't need to exist.
It seems like, because I think we had a conversation about this too. So we see it in marketing, we see it in sales, that like the marketing tactics of like the 60s versus the 80s versus the 90s, the dot-com boom, what we're experiencing now, like how people run even like a webinar from like 5 years ago compared to today is such an extraordinary difference. And sales is like that too. Like, you think of the gross car salesman from before versus today, and it's also because the buyer is far more sophisticated. They've seen a lot more. They're constantly inundated with different marketing campaigns, with different sales styles, different types of NLPs, so on and so forth, where like now they can point out these gimmicks where it's like, this feels fake, this feels off.
So I did a post a long time ago, and I don't want to bash anybody else, but it's a rule. It's like a 55, 35, 10 or something rule. Zig Ziglar, I think it was. and it was 55% tonality, 35%.
Body language. So breaking that.
Yeah, I think,
yeah.
and then it was 5% of what you're saying,
Yeah,
actually, right?
The actual words.
Yeah, right. You know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
right? So we were talking about that one day, and I did I heard someone talking about that on a call, and I was like, oh my God, this is so outdated. We have Google now. Like, people can Google what you say. So the words are actually a lot more important now than your tonality. And if you're having fun and you draw people in, whether you're on the phone or in person or in email, if you have fun with it, then yeah. And I got a lot of business from that because I just did a post about it and people were bashing me like, you have no idea what you're talking about. And people started calling me all these names and I was like, this is fucking awesome. I'm like, stop using my stage name. Like, I was joking about it. People are like, well, you handled that great. It's like, I'm going to make it fun in every situation. If you're attacking me, I'll make it fun. If you hate me, I'll make it fun. If you like me, let's have some fun. Like, but if you just are kind of take that okay approach, it's fine. But things have changed so much so that there's not that ickiness. It's especially from the place we're at. We are at a big transformation place. Like, the pendulum swung really far woke. And it's kind of coming back, and I hope it doesn't go, but pendulums always swing
Too far, yeah.
too far. But when you're in the middle, there's going to be a nice period of people like transparency and honesty and integrity. So if you just talk about what you're, and you draw them in, and the psychological way is asking questions, just out of curiosity, what makes you feel that way? How long have you felt that way? When you feel that way, where do you feel it, or what's it bring up for you? I avoid the word why, and it's not a trigger word, it's a trauma word. And so it allows people the transparency in that space. People go, oh, wow, they're asking me questions. They want to understand me. And again, you're in a way validating how they feel by doing that.
That's sales? Everybody's like, is that what sales is all about? Yeah, I mean, like, you hear it a lot, right? It's just like, ask questions. And it's like, all right, what do I ask? Like, what kind of questions? Like, seriously? Just
I liken it, the example I like to give is be a kid. Because kids can seriously.
What's your third favorite color, Josh?
Although they do ask why
So-
quite a bit.
That's right.
Why?
That's
Trigger
right.
somebody.
Why? That's
Why do you have one eye?
Why? Yeah.
But
Fuck this kid.
Kids can ask things from a place of curiosity.
Yeah.
They can generally ask the most offensive things. I saw my son do it regularly.
But they're so pure when
But
they're.
they are.
Yeah. It's like, it's hard to get mad
Yeah.
at them almost.
So when you have that energy and you match that energy of just being curiosity and being a kid, that's why I love seeing Elon Musk jump around and be crazy and have fun because he's just a big kid.
Yeah.
But again, if you come from that place of curiosity and you're asking questions, you really want to know, then guess what? You win.
What do you think is the key to actually asking great questions, though? Like, stuff that really helps you identify, what's going on with somebody, or it kind of gets you into their world a little bit.
It's not about you. That's the first thing. It's not about you. So don't try to make it about you in the conversation. Like, that's where most people go wrong.
I got a question for you, Josh. What do you love about me? So like that type of thing.
And
It's like that.
This is all the time.
Yeah, like can you expand upon that a little bit? Like, is it redirecting it back to their product, or like what you do for them? Or
So nobody gives a shit about you. Like, was my mantra for a long time, because what happens is if you're telling me something you're dealing with, oh man, I did that too. And if this is the way it made me feel.
yes,
That happens more often than not. And people go, that's rapport building. And it's not rapport building. Rapport building is building trust. By building trust, you're just asking great questions to get to know your client, right? To me, it's dating.
So
although that's probably why a lot of relationships break up, because they do make it about themselves. It's like, hey,
That's
like,
the point.
I see what you're saying. I've seen that. It's just like, oh, I went to that same school too, and it's like, all right, like what happened to me actually talking here?
Yeah.
So it's more about continuing to peel back the onion versus finding things that are relatable and saying that this is a relatable, and then it halts the conversation because now you're essentially at a standstill. Oh, I went to this high school. Me too.
Yeah.
It's like, cool.
It puts up the roadblock. People want to talk about themselves. And I mean, I used to do a demonstration. I did it at Nike one time. I asked the guy, he's like telling me about and he was in the North American soccer division. And I started asking him questions, and he wouldn't answer any of my questions. And we were going back and forth. And I go, what's your favorite subject? And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, what's your favorite subject? And he's like, starts telling me all about his favorite subject. I was like, sweet. And I go, you like football? He's like, yeah. I said, what's Bo Jackson's jersey number? How many yards did he rush for?
Yeah.
What years did he play? You know, where did he go to college? Like he's like, and he maybe got 1 out of 10-ish questions. And I said, all right, did you play football? He's like, yeah. What was your number in high school? He told me. Did you go to college? Did you play in college? Yeah. What was that number? Cool. Do you remember your locker? Yeah. He knew everything about himself, and he was excited. But when you start trying to relate to him, like, oh, Bo Jackson was my favorite running back, you know?
Yeah.
That's the easy example. I was just like, we were just having a sales conversation.
That's just such a great approach because like you said, that is how we're taught to build rapport. Right.
Yeah.
And then I see like people, I mean, like I'm kind of like in the healthcare space and they're like, well, I got this patient who's like 70, but I'm 30 years old. I can't relate to them. It's like, just ask them some questions about their life. Like, it's not a matter of like connecting with them on like, the same things. Like, what are you going to have that much in common with a 70-year-old? Probably not a whole lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I learned a lot from the healthcare space. Like, I learned what I didn't like. Like, my blood pressure's always been super high. At 16, it was like 170 over 120.
Which is very high.
Yeah. No, you don't want to know what it is now. And then, and they're like, my resting heart rate's generally over 100, 110. And when I work out, it's just about 100, 110. Like, it's crazy. And they used to always try to push something on me. And I just recently had a situation where they're like, they threw paperwork at me in the hospital room because I told them not to get in the weeds. I'm not here about that. In a lot of, there's another issue. At that point, my blood pressure was 254 over 178, I think it was.
That's an issue.
That's an issue. But I was dealing with kidney stones. But they threw the paperwork, and I'm like, you guys don't understand. I've dealt with this my entire life. Healthy, unhealthy, it's always been this way. Don't push your belief onto me. Like that, and that's to sales. Don't push your belief onto me. I don't need to hear your shit. Like,
do you feel like people, like, that's a natural tendency that just someone has when they're kind of moving into that space of like, I just don't know what to say and I'm just trying to relate or I'm trying to do this? And
yeah,
how much of what you do is kind of untangling that? You're kind of deprogramming salespeople in a way.
Yeah, well, that's what we were just really what we were just talking about. It's like the newer generation or someone that's never done sales, like a mom that wants to get back into the workforce and get better at sales. That's really what it is. It's just, again, the people that want to actually do something with their life, they want to learn. You just have to, get to know them and, what makes you really want to do this. I go back and I always avoid the word why. And I want to know what drives them and how long have they been out or how long have they been working on something and when did you start experiencing this? It's those three words, the what, how, when, are really crucial in any sale. And when you get a chance to work with somebody that's never done sales, they don't generally ask why. They just don't.
Now, somebody might be listening to this and say, all right, this is great. I can get my sales up, but this really isn't relevant for customer service though, right?
It always is. So customer service is one of the fun things. I worked with a pretty big airline, and I'm not saying names because there's a lot of airlines right now that are crashing. Anyway, so it goes, and I can tell this. I have so many stories about this, but it really is the customer service that really makes a sale. To be honest, if you have a bad experience with a company, you're not going to go back there again, unless you don't have a choice. Right.
Yep.
So I never address the situation like, hey, I'm sorry about that. You'll hear a lot of sales, like customer service people that were trained. I understand. I get that. I'm so sorry. Just align with them. That sucks. You know what? And if you have a cool place you work at, that's bullshit. Like, just be honest.
Yeah.
That is terrible. Let's get that handled. I've known a lot of people over the years that have had cancer. I've never said I'm sorry. Because it's bullshit.
That's not your fault.
Yeah, it's not my fault. I'll tell you a Vitamix story. There was a woman who walked past my booth, and I had a group of salespeople, and I was training them, and I said something I normally don't do. I looked at her, she walked by, and I was like, hey, how are you doing? And she's like you care? And I was like, whoa. If there was any person I wanted to talk to that day, it was her. And I wasn't trying to sell her anything. And she basically went in and, she kept walking. And I said, guys, get this going. I'm going to listen. I'll be right back. And so I went, and she was walking away from me, and I put my hand on her cart. And I said, ma'am, I said, just so you know, I don't normally ask people how they're doing. And when I looked at you, I don't know why it came out. And she goes, you want to know how I'm doing? And she just laid into me. I buried my husband this week, had a doctor's appointment, and I have breast cancer. And I was like, that fucking sucks. And she's like, no one has ever said that. Everybody says, I'm sorry. True story. The worst part about it is not the worst part. The best part was we sat there and talked for about 30 minutes. We both cried. Mm-hmm. It was just an emotional call, or not call, but face-to-face situation. And it was just like the most heartwarming thing. She said at the end, can I give you a hug? And I said, well, I would be honored. Gave her a hug. She came back the next day, brought me lunch. Like the next day was just she would come to see me like almost every day, because I wasn't the person that was going to feed into the bullshit story. So the customer service part of me wasn't like, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry you feel that way. The customer service is really about aligning and allowing the person to be vulnerable and really talk about what's going on. And then if you can fix it, you fix it. And if you can't, you can't. But you don't apologize.
Yeah. Yeah, like Brian, I kind of like really listen to a lot of Brené Brown, but that was something I struggled with back in the day, because she talks a lot about just that, the difference between sympathy versus empathy. Versus like, I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, versus just like, all right, let me try to understand where you're coming from and like feel what you're feeling and try to just work through that. So I love that a lot.
Yeah, and again, it comes back to where the pendulum we're at right now. People want authenticity.
Yeah.
You know, and most people don't want sympathy, for being honest about it. It makes you feel weak.
Talking about the pendulum swinging, one of the things that we've seen a lot that kind of that's been growing at times, or it's like a thing that's almost glorified, is a little bit of a victim mentality.
Oh Lord!
And so people that, let's just say they've been having more of a victim mentality, they still need to buy certain things. They still kind of need to be sold. How do you go about talking to your sales teams or training, is like when you're dealing with someone that's like this, how do you kind of still get the sale out of integrity and everything else, but you're addressing this type of person?
Anybody that's a victim, I address it head on. So I will literally say to them, and this is where triggering people.
I'm really interested in this, because the whole trigger thing where you almost want to shatter it, but
and I do. I just go after you go after the victim harder, and I don't know what there is about it. It's like the weak one in the bunch. They always, the predator goes after the weak one, but you don't want to do that in this sense. You want to come at it with honesty and integrity. So you literally say, I've heard you mention this a couple times, and you've said, and use their words. You've said this and this. How long have you been a victim? Or like, dude, like you call a spade a spade.
Yep.
You don't call a zebra. Like, if you want to be honest about it, you go back. Like, guys,
Sorry. How long have you been a victim?
How long have you been a victim?
3 weeks.
Well, like, I mean,
it's 6 days.
Yeah,
it definitely interrupts their pattern.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. It's like not feeding into the same kind of bullshit, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, all right, let's do a hard interrupt and like let's try to do a reset.
So remember when I said my dad was really reactional?
Yep.
My dad was volatile, like abusive, like volatile. And I will never forget this, clear as day. It was a Chevy pickup parked in front of our house, and we had property. And my dad was throwing a fit, throwing shovels, kicking things. He was pissed the fuck off, and I don't know why. And I was little. I was not even in kindergarten yet. I was little. I remember this clearly like yesterday. He was off, unhinged, and he opened the door of the truck and he threw me in. I bounced off the dash and fell on the floor. And I remember getting up, and I remember when he got in the truck, and I don't know really what was being said. And this sometimes I really like kind of go, is reincarnation real? Because of the shit I used to do. But I remember I literally said to him, I'm like, hey, Dad, are zebras horses? I will never forget that. And he's like slams the truck and he's trying to get the key in the ignition. He is like shaking. And my dad was big. I'm 6'4". My dad was bigger than me.
Yeah.
Like big, 6'5", 6'6", size 17 shoe, like big fucking dude.
Very intimidating.
Yeah. And he's trying to get the key in the ignition. I will never forget. I'm like, Dad, are zebras horses? He's like, what? I go, they look like horses. Why aren't they horses? And they're white though. He's like, I will never forget that. He's like, I don't know. Well, they eat hay, right? And I just calm.
Huh.
Calm.
There you go.
My dad was reactionary. And back to the victim portion, when people are in victim state, they're just being reactionary. And so when you can just say it like it is and start asking them questions and be real and authentic about it, how long have you been a victim? You know, has this actually happened to you in other times? And the one they hate is I love this sequence. People like to bitch about something else not working for them, and it doesn't work for them, and it won't work for them. And I will literally say, so what role did you play in it not working? And if it's a coaching program, they'll be like, what do you mean? What role did you play in it not working? Because it worked for all these other people. All right, what makes it different for you? Mm-hmm. And then they'll kind of go, what does that mean? Did you email? Did you ask for help? Did you raise your hand? Did you follow up? Did you do the work?
Did you do the work's a big one.
Yeah, did you do the work?
Exactly how we lay out the work. Did you do it that way?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And then they start breaking up the pattern of the victim, because you can only play the victim so much. And if they really want to continue down the victim path, I like to call a spade, right? So in life, there's duality. The biggest victims are the biggest victimizers. So which are you? And then they're like, and if they're really a good person, they'll have that conversation.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, that's the approach that, like, nobody will want to take, right? Because you get a lot of people who won't like you for doing that.
That's okay,
right? But then you have everybody else who feeds into it. It's like, I'm your friend, or I'm your support, and they just feed into the mentality versus the one person who calls them out on their shit. And I remember there was a guy a long time ago who was like, I tell everybody this stuff nobody else is willing to tell them. But then they come back to me like years later and say, you were the only one who told me the truth. I was actually trying to help me. And I was like, damn, that's powerful, man.
Yeah.
That's so I can, like, honor somebody like yourself, because it's like, I'm here to help. If you're really here to serve, you tell them the truth.
Yeah. And we talked about it yesterday, that video you sent me about the guys playing video games and how they were talking to each other. And it was honest talk. It was fun, but they talk different because they're friends. They're best friends, so they could talk about the dark shit.
Yep.
That's where best friends lie, right? Like, hey, I told you that girl was bad. You married her, had a kid with her. You're accountable. And you're like...
There was one thing that you said before too, man, like that when you are identifying someone that is, very much like a victim, mm-hmm. that you run that up. And I think you were giving an example before. I think I saw this on like a training that you did like a while back, where you were talking about, I think it was animals in Africa, and how you want to continue to chase. I think maybe it had to do with foxes or something, where like you're.
I was probably in the flow.
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah.
What the hell are you talking about?
I give the best examples when I'm just going.
Yeah, dude, it was covered in cream cheese.
Penguins in Antarctica. Yeah,
but it was that when someone is giving that to you, you continue to push it with them to like so they can exhaust their victim mentality.
Yeah, you run it. Yeah,
you run it. Right.
You run it so much so. Like I had a trainer, and she would tell me all the time, like, feel your most defeated. Feel like the pain, wherever the pain was, wherever we were going in the she's like, now take it to a 10. Now just run it. I do a lot of contemplation. I will write out the biggest fears, why I don't deserve something, why I'm very, like, whatever it is. And I just go in deep, and like, I don't deserve anything because of this. I'll never be what I amount to. Like, it's scary shit, but it's looking in the dark mirror.
Yeah.
And then you exhaust it, and you're like,
the shadow.
That's just the shadow. So you just go in the shadow work, and you just go, wait a minute, that's not real. Mm-hmm. And you do that with people too. You allow them to feel that pain, and you have the real conversation. I think it's well over 75% of the people I get on the phone with, if I'm doing a real sales call, they'll break down, they'll cry. There was a training call I did with one of the guys, one of Jeremiah's guys back in the day, and he was like the systems guy, and we were doing a training call for the sales team. I was like, and he knew what to expect. He ended up about 15 or 20 minutes in having a moment and just breaking down. And then the best thing you can do for someone in that moment that they're running hard, you know, it's like I ask a lot of people when someone's hurting, you know, do you hug them? And they're like, well, yeah. I'm like, why do you do that? Or what makes you want to do that? And they're like, because I want to comfort them. Okay. But what makes you want to comfort them? Because I feel bad. Okay. What makes you feel bad? And I'm trying to get them to get to the point of like, you're doing it because you feel awkward. Why do you need to eliminate the awkwardness? It's their moment. You're alleviating the moment of them feeling that. Like, it's no different than feeling pleasure. Pain is the same thing. Because once you feel it, it goes away. And if it doesn't, you need to go harder.
You know, and kind of being in this world where we're talking about just being a student of human behavior, understanding people, being really great with words. One thing that you mentioned a little bit earlier was coming from honesty and integrity. And I've seen sales guys where it's like, man, it's not just salespeople. It's just people that are really good at communication, where they start kind of going into almost the dark side because they've gotten so good at this where they can kind of bend rules a little bit more, overpromise certain things. If you've ever seen that, like, what's your thought process on that when someone's just getting really skilled in here, where now it's starting to move in the direction of manipulation, and you're like, I need to reel this back in?
There's a manipulation tactic done in sales that I've told people, I ever hear you say this, you are fired on the spot. It's the one that's like, it's better to ask forgiveness than permission.
That is so common. Yeah. Talk a little bit about that.
You're fired.
Yeah.
You're fired. I heard it to Trump. You're fired.
Fired.
You're fired.
Yeah.
So what it comes down to is you're giving into weakness if you need to use a manipulation tactic. If you're tricking somebody, you're playing on their emotions. And I didn't necessarily ever believe in karma, but I really do believe in karma, because I've seen the people that do that no longer exist. And the reason people do that, like I mentioned, is weakness. They don't have the courage to say that what really needs to be said. And someone's done it. Everything's a learned behavior. Manipulation's a learned behavior. Everything is a learned behavior, whether you like it or not. People need to do, there's a lot more introspective work people could do to be really good at sales. And if you're feeling like you're going to manipulate somebody, you need to get in the space by basically just kind of not zone out, but kind of just take a breath. I think one of the biggest things kind of on the manipulation side, but what makes people really good at sales is the fact that you're able to see the person, what the person's pain is. It's almost like being an empath, right?
Yeah.
People aren't empaths because they have a secret weapon. People are empaths because they can see something in someone else and identify with it so much because they're the same pain they've dealt with. And so when it comes down to a sale, it's the ability to see in someone's soul, to ask them the questions that you wouldn't want to be asked because you can see it. It's basically you, right? That makes sense? Is that wordy?
Yep.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're following.
Yeah.
So basically, like if I see something in Dan, it's like I've experienced that. So instead of talking about me, so this is the trick. Instead of talking about me and going, oh, I went to that high school too, no. It's like I'll just start asking you questions that I wouldn't want somebody to ask me. Remember where they used to shove kids in lockers? That never happened to me, to be clear.
Yeah.
Like
You're way too big.
way too big.
Yeah.
Maybe a dumpster, but not a locker.
Like a ditch or something.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So I'm going to start asking questions. Did you ever hang out there, or did you hear about this teacher or whatever? I'll start asking you questions based on my experience, but the ones that people want to ask me. And generally, a lot of time it's around money.
Yeah.
So when people start manipulating, it's around money. So people need to look at their own money story and introspectively break down why they're failing at money. That list.
That's interesting. Yeah, 'cause I mean, like, there's stuff even just in like society, right? Like, even difference between men and women. It's like you can't understand what I'm feeling. It's like you're probably right because I'm a man. I've never experienced like some of your stuff that you've had to deal with. So no, I can't really fully get it, but I could take the time to understand you by just letting you, asking you a question, not making it about me. Not a big shift, but like I'm kind of curious to know, where does leadership and you mentioned like self introspection, like where does just leadership and like mindset development within a team and a leader come into play in this space?
For me, I was asked this question a while back, so there's multiple answers. So the first answer is, especially in sales, when you're looking for salespeople or you're looking at yourself and you're like, how can I get better at sales? It sounds very counterproductive. Spend money. Great salespeople spend money.
A lot of money.
A lot of money.
A lot of fucking money. Yeah.
Because they know they can make it, and it challenges them a little bit more. If there's not a challenger, a good salesperson just be like bored. It's like the ADHD myth or ADD myth. It's like kids just need experience and be run more, right? Yeah. Seriously, and then you're exhausted. You're like, oh man, I got to challenge it more.
It's almost like a gamify where it's like you get so good at certain skills, and it's like, okay, I'm selling gym memberships now. I should maybe sell, timeshare to luxury cars to something else, and it's like you start kind of growing in that. Is that kind of what you mean there, as far as like investing to elevate yourself?
Well, investing in yourself. I used to gamify it like this. When I was at Costco, so with Vitamix, and I was mainly at Costco's, I would look at their jewelry case, and if I got to a number, I would buy out one of their expensive watches. I have a case of big watches, and my wife bought me a nice case. I'm like, she didn't know, but I'm like, I need a bigger case. And that's, as you know, I used to buy like so many sneakers, Nikes, expensive ones. And they're on display at home. You've seen them.
Yeah.
And I got rid of about 100 of them at one point. So I'm like, do I need these? I still have about 60 pairs that some are displayed, some are not. So I spend money because I know I can make more money. It's just, it has to happen. The second thing is really when it comes to sales and leadership, if you're going to be the leader, lead by example. Okay. If you're going to set up a system or a process, stick to that system. The worst thing you can do is go outside that system and circumvent and go, well, I sold 3 today. You sold 0. Why is that? And they'll be like, can I listen to your calls? That's one. As a leader, you follow your system. The other part as a leader, hire fast, fire faster. Mm-hmm. You don't need somebody in your sales team and around your environment that's going to drag other people down because of bad behavior. Like that's the thing. On the sales side of it, and the leadership, I think salespeople need to ask for training. They constantly need to be trained. And you set up the trainings with 15 minutes bullshit, 15 minutes housekeeping, just get your shit done, and 30 minutes of just either role play or having fun. The other side of the coin, so contrast to that, training-wise, how you find out if someone's a really not the best sales trainer or in sales is they talk about their objection handling skills as they're bragging about it. Have you know what I mean?
Explain.
I overcame this objection, and this is, you'll see a lot of sales coaches do it, which drives me nuts. They're bragging about their objection handling skills and how they are good at objection handling, which means they just fucked up the first portion of diving in and finding out what the problem. We've talked about this. Finding out what the problem is, addressing the issues, having the real conversation, setting goals, yada 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 down the line.
It just means you missed other things.
Like I guess so many objections that I overcome. It's like, and you're probably not that good.
Yeah.
So these guys that run around and talk about, and when I say guys, I mean sales trainers, run around and brag about their objection handling. That's the type of leader you need to avoid because they're not doing their job at the beginning. So they're not going to be able to really help you become a good salesperson, in my opinion.
I got a question on that. So like when someone's a business owner and the sales is starting to grow and everything, and now it's ultimately needing to delegate. You get a CFO, you get a marketing person, and it's time to maybe get a general manager or sales manager, but more specifically a sales manager. What would be some advice that you would give to a business owner where like, hey, you're starting to look for maybe a sales manager to handle this department? What are some pieces of advice you would give them to make sure that they don't get screwed over, that they're doing it right? What are some tips and tricks that's effective for them?
First thing is they don't come in as a sales manager. They come in as a salesperson.
Okay.
They have to understand the product, the service, whatever it is on the back end. That's number one. You never hand a good sales manager the keys right off the bat because they're not a doer. And I was told this recently. No. Refer to you guys yourself as the creators. It's like
What? What?
Yeah,
What?
I was just recently told this on a call. It's
Open
like
my mouth a little bit.
creators. Like, what do you mean? Nobody likes a doer. I'm a fucking doer. I love doing because I can accomplish shit. So you want a doer on your team, and they have to go out and do it for themselves. They have to take that that approach of actually being able to get out there and
Executional performance. Yeah.
prove themselves. Make them prove themselves. If you don't do that, that's the worst thing. You don't bring somebody in. If you have somebody on your team, you don't pit people against other people, say, hey, if you do this, or whoever gets here first gets this position. No, you do it off merit. You do it off, like, did you put in the work? Did you show up early? Did you prepare for the call? And then give them small
Like incentives?
tactics. No,
Tactics? Okay.
tactics like, so, hey, Dan, I'm going to have you work with Antonio today, and then back and forth, collaborate and see if there's a better way to do X, Y, and Z. Just give them a task. See who's going to come out with the best. That's the way it should always be done. Give them small, not menial tasks, but tasks to like see how they collaborate.
Stuff that they can handle, but kind of gives you an idea
Yeah.
of how they work, how they communicate.
Yeah.
And just kind of figure out from there.
Yep, for sure.
So and it kind of sounds like you're saying like you hire that person who maybe was an A+ at another company, but you're like, that person might be a B for us.
Mhm.
So still giving time to like vet them. Like you said, it's
Yeah.
not just like, all right, your resume was amazing. Here's the keys. It's like you still got to prove yourself and make
Yeah.
sure you live up to our standards.
Yeah, and the other thing this is kind of part of that point, but not. So where you look for salespeople is fun. If you ever have a salesperson knock on your door, talk to them. Give them objections. Even if you need the product, give them objections and see how they do with it. Make them like earn it.
Yeah.
Right, and then still don't hire them or whatever. But if you want to.
Yeah.
But then say, hey, I love what you did here. Can I get your number? Or you go to a Walmart. I hate to say that name, but go to Walmart and the people who sell AT&T in the store and wander around. Anybody who's a wandering salesperson, avoid the kiosks at the mall because they're the manipulative ones. You got to be careful. So again, find people that hustle and want to hustle. That's the funnest thing to do. It's just like
They got to have the drive. and
They gotta have the
skills
drive.
can be learned later.
100%. Anybody can learn a product or like a little bit of skill, but nobody can teach drive. Kind of goes back to the generational thing we're dealing with right now with the kids. It's not that they don't have the drive. They were just never taught the drive.
Yeah.
And their drive is being the number one at Fortnite or some other video game. And
There's an interesting here because you see this in sports teams.
Oh, yeah.
Where just because someone is like the best player doesn't mean that they're a good coach or they're a good facilitator or manager. So you've seen this like with all kinds of folks. It's like very rare to have someone that they're a great coach, they're a great player. Like I think of Larry Bird as an example, where MVP, champion, great general manager, great coach, like the whole package. That's like a rarity. So in your world, where if someone is like a top sales closer, does that automatically mean that they're going to be a great manager? And walk us through why you're shaking your head. Right? Because a lot of business owners think that's it. Why
so
is it not that?
remember I said a lot of introspective work because I was always at the top.
Yeah.
Always. Like I sold tanning for a while and I had the smallest tanning salon and killed it and was beating the ones that were bigger that were doing 100,000 a month. I had way less beds, a smaller footprint, and was killing them. And then they gave me another one. I took that salon up and then had 3 under my, just because you're a killer doesn't mean you can be a manager because I had to remove a lot of the ego. And at the same time go, I have an ego and I'm the best. But still go, you know what? It's not all about ego. So when you have a killer salesperson, a number one top performer, there's a lot of ego in there. Like I used to take it offensively because I wasn't even eligible for them, but I killed everybody else's numbers with the Vitamix as a sales trainer. That I was like, that's when they were like, hey, you're going to come speak at our events. Was because when I used to get upset, they're like, we just had the number one sales guy here a couple weeks ago. Are you going to beat him? And I was like, I started carrying around my awards. And the next year when I got awards, I gave the awards back to him and said, I'd rather have the money. Stop spending money on awards. Like, I was that arrogant when it came to being a salesperson. So I had to learn in the last 6 years, like, what ego really is and when to use it and when not to. Mm-hmm. And so when you have a killer, doesn't make them just a great sales leader. Mm-hmm. They'll come at things emotionally, not, emotionless.
Yeah, the hustler is not always a great manager, for sure. So I feel like we could, like, honestly just spend like hours and hours, but we don't have hours and hours. So I'm really want to know, like, amazing track record, and we touched like barely freaking any of it. But what's the next phase looking like for you? Because you're definitely, like you said, you're a doer, but you're hungry, you're motivated. What's the next phase looking like for Josh?
So the next phase is really about honing skills for other people in product, or it's a tech service we're building out. It's part of an AI tool. It's called Owli, OWLI, stands for Organically Wisely Leveraged Influence. So I've talked a lot about being authentic and coming from integrity. And one of the shifts I've seen over the years is you'll sit in a meeting around a table about this big and talk about how we're going to spend this month $500,000 on Facebook or social media ads. And it's just not coming from a place of authenticity and integrity. You can look at these big coaches of big names out there, and there's people that have better, if not amazing ideas like they did at one point, but people fall off at some point, right? Like, kings get replaced, so to speak.
Very true.
Yeah. And so you see these guys who have millions of dollars, they're bragging about millions of dollars, they're sitting on their Ferraris, their Lamborghinis, Porsches, whatever, just using the coaching industry as an example. And there's people out there that are amazing coaches who kind of fight up against that, and they don't have the money to compete, so they end up losing out on a lot of their ideal client base. I'm creating a disruptor in marketing, and it's coming from a space of authenticity and integrity. If you're not an expert in your industry, you're going to struggle using the tool. But if you're passionate about what you do and you truly want to help other people and you love what you can do for other people, the tool's going to be easy because it extracts your genius, like literally extracts it from you. It ideates with you. It builds out your entire marketing for the month. I mean, it's, I can't share too much, but I can say it's when someone does sign an NDA and then walk them through the tool and show them what we're doing, and they're like, you're going to do this. It's like, no, we are doing it. It's almost completed. We have a hard launch date of the end of March. We're going to be in the beta testing here in the next few weeks. But it is insane.
What would be the biggest, like, I'm thinking just of that like, even, so is it going to be more for, like, every company available? Okay, so I'm thinking for, like, the company that says, like, hey, look, we spend $10,000 a month on our marketing between Facebook and Google. We're getting good returns on it. What are you looking to see? Like, all right, here's, like, how we can either accentuate that or replace that and make it so much better.
So it's twofold, right? It's about really capturing your expertise and drawing in your ideal client, number one. Number two, it's about stop wasting money on ads and stuff that don't matter, that don't work. We have a mutual friend that spends $100,000 a month, or did last year multiple times, didn't see anything for it. So this extracts basically from you using your authenticity and integrity. The problem with AI right now is, right, you type in, I want to talk to, for me, salespeople would be my avatar base audience. And what do I want to talk about? What's the most dangerous word in a sale? And I type that in, and then it scrapes the internet and grabs everybody else's stuff, and then it puts it up and then writes your copy for you. This won't do that. So there's no more training AI, taking courses how to train AI. This literally captures your unique perspective, builds out all your email campaigns. Like, so let's say it ideates with you three interactions. It'll build out in 5 minutes 3 video, that you post on social media. The copy that goes with the video, including hashtags or anything else, targeting your competitors or people in your industry. It also builds out your email sequences and captures your most impactful quote that's kind of like a meme. And so then it automatically schedules it. So you don't have to go to multiple, because everybody talks about AI. You're averaging between 4 to 9 tools.
Yes.
to do your marketing with AI. We're going to have the one tool that interacts with everything.
That's
Saves
exactly what I'm
so
thinking.
much time.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
I go to this for my email copy. I go here for the, social media. I go, it's like, yes. It's like, just brings it all together.
Time and money, but again, and people go, who's it for? It's like, well, small, medium businesses, kind of like, that's what I love. Healthcare industry, lawyers, entrepreneurs, construction workers, general contractors. Like, I was testing it the other day with, I did a motorcycle shop, and then I was like, then I did a test on our prototype with gluten-free cookies bakery, and it was like the craziest thing. And I won't talk about it, but I'll share the way it writes. We've done something nobody's done ever, the way we have it to write, and it captures again your unique perspective.
Yeah, I'm like thinking of like the doctor who's like, you listen to like, what the hell are they saying? And the thing kind of and then like translates into like layman's terms. Like, that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's not only layman's terms, but some doctors have personalities.
Yes, or lack thereof.
Yeah.
Yeah, but here's the great thing: you have a doctor that has a great personality, and they're going to attract the people that want a doctor with
Yes,
great personality.
100%.
You're gonna have a doctor with a dry personality, and they're going to be like, I want that doctor, because there's people who love dry sense of humor.
Yes, yep.
Yeah, and so this tool really separates. Are they an expert? Absolutely, because I can tell. Do I want to interact with this person because of their personality or your unique brand voice? Absolutely, because
Yeah.
they're fucking awesome. And then you attract your ideal audience, and it just makes it simple. But again, I can't stress enough. It's like I want to attract the ideal audience, like who you really identify with and who you are as an individual. Like authenticity is big to me.
Yeah.
Like huge. I had a buddy that texted me. It's like, man, your sales stuff is so great. I learned so much from you. You built my team. Just was going down the line. Dude, you increased revenue by X amount percentage. Like it's insane. But do you need to curse so much? And this is on LinkedIn, the message. And I was like, bro, don't watch my fucking shit anymore. Like that was my message back to him. And he just did a big eye. Like, I'm like,
Not for you.
Even though he worked with me, he just doesn't like cursing. Like,
Yeah.
stay the fuck away.
Yep.
Dude, I'm really excited for that. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to use it. I know certainly we are. I know you said that there's a couple things that need to be not cleared, but like set up, next. So I'd like to drop a link into this episode. Let us know whatever works, so people can maybe be on a wait list or do something as this drops the next, whatever time frame. And
Landing page goes up, I think, here in a week. So
yeah,
I'll definitely send it to you guys, and you guys can drop it in there at any point.
awesome. Well, Josh, thank you so much, man. I got so many really great notes here, and just such a treat.
Yeah, that was a great dude. Really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's an honor being here, and I'm, just want to help everybody out there. So
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
thank you.
All right. Awesome.